Hello and welcome to People and Profit. I'm Charles Pellegrin. This week we ask the question, miracle or mirage? Depending on who you ask, those are the answers you'll get when asking about Javier Milei's economic results as president of Argentina. The libertarian leader was elected in 2023 on promises to slash government spending, liberate business potential, and tame skyrocketing inflation. So where do we stand now, especially as he approaches his third year in office and with midterm elections around the corner on October 26th? Well, we'll ask Juan Ignacio Carranza, lead analyst at Aurora Macro Strategies, who joins us from Buenos Aires. Thank you for being with us.
Pleasure being here.
So annual inflation was in the triple digits when Milei came to office 2 years ago. It's now slowed down to above 30%. Can you explain to us what really changed to bring that number down?
Well, I think that's part of what everyone is looking at in Argentina and how Milei is doing in the economy. That was his core mandate, taking inflation down. And there are two things that are important here to understand why inflation has gone down. First of all, has to do with the strict fiscal policy. Argentina has made a strong fiscal adjustment that has also included stop asking for money to the central bank, and therefore the central bank has dramatically reduced the printing money. And the second point that is really important has to do with the FX. Argentina is an economy where people tend to think both in pesos, the local currency, and also in dollars. And any change in the FX regime and the volatility of the FX usually does translate into higher prices and higher inflation. So therefore, the Milei administration has taken really care of how the FX has moved, and therefore we have had peg regimes of the FX, and after April we are seeing how the FX has been floating but within some bands, and any volatility in the FX could translate into higher inflation. So therefore, so far, despite the turbulence that we had in the past 3 months, the stability in the FX regimes has also been key to maintain and lower down the pace of inflation in Argentina.
So you mentioned FX for our viewers, it was foreign exchange. What you call stability or lack of volatility in the exchange rate between the peso and the dollar has come at a price, though. And we've seen this in recent weeks with Argentina paying to prop up the peso versus the dollar and going through its reserves of US dollars now currently with only $700 million left, I believe. Does this mean that basically the Milei administration artificially propped up its currency in order to fight back inflation? And what does that mean?
Precisely. That's a very great point. And we have seen some volatility for the last 3 months. So far, in terms of that pass-through of that volatility to prices, it has been low. But for sure, we're seeing how the central bank and the treasury are trying to pace down the curve of the FX and keep that the peso within those levels to avoid inflation. That's why we have seen the Milei administration go into Washington, D.C. and asking one of the most important ally that the administration has, Donald Trump, to bail them out. And of course, that volatility is because of two reasons. One, low reserves in the central bank, Argentina. It's true that Milei has inherited a central bank deployed without dollars to eventually face this kind of struggles that countries do have. And the second one is that those low reserves and the mistrust of the capabilities of the government to tame the political situation have brought some turbulence. We'll see how this goes. One thing important to say is that if you compare the currencies of Latin American countries during this year, you'll see that most of Latin American countries' currencies have appreciated, and that is because a weak dollar, and that is a trend that goes globally. Paradoxically, Argentina pesos has the only one that has devaluated, right? Of course, And as you said, we need to compare what happened last year, that Argentina peso was really appreciated, was really expensive. So if you were here in Buenos Aires in December, you would get a coffee, it would be, and any shop getting a coffee would be really similar to Manhattan levels, right? So I think we're going through that process and looking ahead, and for the forecast of the peso, we are counting that we're gonna see some sort of devaluation after the midterms, after the 26th of October midterms. That is gonna be a challenge. And the big question is, how is that gonna play with inflation, right? How is any change in the currency, in the peso against the dollar, how is that gonna translate into prices? Are we gonna see more inflation? Are we gonna keep those inflation levels at the current trends? I think that is quite interesting. And of course, for the last 3 months in this volatility, we haven't seen inflation being affected because of this volatility. I think it also has to do with how the economy has cooled down, right? Weaker activity has not yet allowed to translate this into prices.
A couple of things to note here for our viewers. Obviously, that pledged support from the Trump administration to give that $20 billion swap line to the Argentinian central bank, and whether that will go through, that will be a huge factor. And obviously a reminder that Milei had run on a platform of dollarization of the economy. I want to focus on another figure now that's been really advertised about Argentina in recent months. The poverty rate actually coming down to 31.6% in the first half of 2025, and that's been the lowest level since 2018. How should we interpret that particular figure?
Yes, that's a great question, and it has to do, again, what we said previously in this interview. It has to do with lowering inflation and the purchasing power of those who have salaries, right, because of the peso appreciation. So this is income poverty. And those who have salaries, who have jobs, have been able to improve their purchasing power and that have improved and had gotten out of the line of poverty, right? And this is a trend and something that we see generally in Argentina for the last, I would say, 20 years. The big challenge is breaking that 30% barrier of lowering poverty, right? Which would need reforms, would need, especially would need more stability in terms of growth, right? Argentina is a very volatile economy, and we have seen these indicators of poverty and therefore linked with economic activity, very volatile. So yes, it has to do with inflation. Yes, it has to do with some sort of improving the purchasing power because of the peso has gotten stronger. But therefore, we also need to understand that Argentina is also an economy that is really relies on informality. And that indicator doesn't take into consideration those who have no salaries registered or those who don't have jobs.
So economic indicators are one thing, but lived experience is another. So let's get a feel for the situation on the ground. Argentinians, depending on their situation, are still struggling with purchasing power. Small and medium businesses have shut down and jobs are being lost. Take a look at this report by our team in Buenos Aires, Mathilde Guillaume, Mariana Toledo, and Lucia Cholakian.
Javier Milei has certainly brought inflation under control. But despite this victory, living in Argentina today is very expensive, almost as much as in France, while the minimum wage here is only 250 euros.
This bar of chocolate costs almost 7 euros. It doesn't make sense.
Like most Argentinians, Camila, who earns 700 euros a month, gets back on all her expenses.
I buy lower quality products. I've switched to second brands. I buy less.
Consumption continues to fall, down almost 20% in a year for this grocery store. This drop in demand, combined with the indiscriminate opening up to competition from imports, is weighing heavily on Argentina's manufacturing sector. This textile factory has seen its orders fall by 50% since Javier Milei took office. It is now operating at reduced capacity.
We had to lay off 7 out of 20 employees and cut 1 shift, which represents a day and a half less. We're now operating at 50% of our capacity. And if the decline continues, we'll have to close.
16,000 businesses have closed in 2 years, leaving more than 250,000 employees out of work. And the layoffs continue. These 300 workers at the ceramics factory were laid off a month ago without compensation. Some employers are taking advantage of the recent dismantling of worker protection laws to avoid paying them. Fernando was a great admirer of Javier Milei, and now he feels betrayed.
It's Milei who allowed this situation to happen. I voted for him, and I apologize to all Argentinians who are now in a terrible situation. I feel guilty because I really believed that things would be better with him. But we're no better off. Look around.
This grim economic picture is one of the reasons for Javier Milei's recent loss of popularity. The parliamentary elections at the end of October are shaping up to be challenging for him.
So, Juan Ignacio, your reaction to this report, is this just another facet of the same story, or is it a completely different narrative?
I think it's about the complexity of the story, right? I think that the example of the textiles industry is a key example of how what Argentina before Milei was and what Argentina for Milei, what he wants about Argentina to be, right? Because textiles have been in Argentina a really close economy before Milei. Were not into competition with foreign companies, and now with the Milei administration, we have seen how he has even opened that sector of the economy, which in fact, if you follow the sub-index of inflation, you have seen that prices have gone down, right? Because textiles from abroad are cheaper. So that I think that is a great point to see how the Milei economic model collides with the reality of Argentina, right? And if there's going to be a transition, we'll see where it goes. The sectors that have been most benefited from the economic model of Milei have been the mining sector, the energy sector, some services, but the manufacturing of Argentina, and we haven't seen yet some improvements in terms of the equipments of technology that may improve their processes. So far, we haven't seen that. So I think that really the interview really nails us in terms of showing the complexity, the trade-offs, and the tensions of the economic model of Milei.
And at the end of the day, this is what matters in the polls, people's lived experience. So does this mean necessarily that we'll see a return of Peronist economics in Argentina soon, a return of protectionism, of state interventionism?
That's the key question, right? We're going to, and part of the answer is going to come on Sunday, 26th of October, when we have those midterms. I think that we're going to see in Argentina divided in terms of political options in the menu. We're going to see an Argentina divided in thirds, right? A Milei option, which will improve. However, it's not going to be a resonating victory. On the contrary, I think it's going to be quite challenging for Milei to get a good outcome. The Peronist option that has been the opposition, and as you said, it is a kind of economic model more with state intervention and protectionism. And a third option that comes from the rest of the country, from the governors, that are going to be the arbitrators for what relies in Argentina for the upcoming 2 years and the future. And if there's options for some reforms, right, in terms of a labor reform, a tax reform, and other reforms that eventually could lower costs in Argentina. That's the big question. I think we're going to see that. And again, I do think that politics are essential, something that for the last year, the Milei administration has not doing well, and Congress is putting him against the wall. So that's the big question. And as always, the democracy in Argentina is working. So we're going to see what citizens choose.
So to conclude our conversation, if you can wrap everything we set up in a quick sentence, miracle or mirage?
I would say that most of that question could be tricky, but I think it's more about a mirage. I would definitely say that we're not seeing an anarcho-capitalism economy of Milei. He has constraints, and I would dare to say that for the upcoming 2 years, anarcho-capitalism is out of the menu, and he will need to put on the suit of being a really savvy political negotiator if he wants his government to continue with a good pace and some sort of economic recovery.
Juan Ignacio Carranza, lead analyst at Aurora Macro Strategies. Thank you for speaking with us on People and Profit.
Charles, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, let's finish on a note, though, everyone can agree on. Argentina is the world champion, though, when it comes to football. No debate here, even from this Frenchman. Thank you for watching. As usual, you can catch all of our previous episodes on the France 24 app. Bye-bye, and stay tuned.